Welcome and thank you for joining Oregon Now and APICO for the Unity Through Intersectionality Shattering the Bamboo Ceiling session. I am Christine Chin Ryan, President of Oregon Now and APICO Board Chair, as well as the Board of Governors for AAUC. National Organization for Women is the largest organization of feminist grassroots activists in the United States with 6 core priorities: constitutional equality amendment, ERA, reproductive rights and justice, racial justice, LGBTQIA+ rights, ending violence against women, and economic justice. APICO is a new organization that just this morning graduated 5 young, amazing APIA women that interned in the Oregon State Legislature through a grant from Civic Leadership Academy. This session will be exciting as you will be hearing from our speakers lived experiences in an authentic and exposed manner on shattering their bamboo ceiling. We will do a land acknowledgement now. We acknowledge that our place of community gathering, service, and home rest on the traditional ancestral lands of the Multnomah, Wasco, Cathlamet, Clackamas, Cowlitz Band of Chinook, Tahltan, Kalapuya, Molalla, and many other tribes who've made their homes along the Columbia and Willamette rivers. We recognize that this land was stolen and occupied by colonists and settlers, and its indigenous people displaced. As immigrants, refugees, asylees, settlers, and guests, we honor the diverse Native tribal communities in our region and offer respect for their strength, resiliency, and care of these lands throughout the generations to allow us to reside in it today. We give gratitude and share in the struggle and fight for collective liberation with our indigenous communities. I will turn it over to our facilitator, Donna Shikantoy Donsano Pitt. Donna will tell you about herself. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Donna Sikantoy Donsanofe. I use the pronoun she, her, hers. I am Lao American. I am a program manager for Pivotal Moments, where I coordinate and implement leadership development workshop trainings for young API leaders. And I'm excited to be here today because a lot of the work I do center among uplifting Asian American voices and empowering leaders to tell their stories. Now I get to introduce you 4 amazing API leaders who are making a great impact in our communities. Starting with our first guest speaker, she is the first South Asian AAPI president of Now, New Jersey. And if elected, will be the first South Asian and AAPI woman in New Jersey legislator. Please, Anjali, introduce yourself and say hello.
Thank you, Donna. Hi, my name is Anjali Mehrotra, and I also use she, her pronouns. And as Donna mentioned, I am the current president for Now New Jersey. And in that role, I do a lot of legislative work, a lot of advocacy around our 6 issues that Christine talked about before. Now prides itself on being a multi-issue organization. We recognize that almost any issue, especially that ones that are considered progressive, so whether it be housing, affordable healthcare, to even, our food sources and things like that, all are impacting women in sort of a much more burdensome manner than almost any other community, especially when we're talking about women in marginalized communities. So Now is proud to work on all of those issues, and in New Jersey, we work on bills for all of them. I am also on the national board for Now. So in that role, the board is responsible for fiduciary and governance of Now. And I'm sure you'll hear a lot more about my story, but I'll let Donna move on to the next one right now.
Thank you, Anjali. Next, I have the pleasure of working with this individual. He is the first immigrant and Gen Z to hold the chief of staff position and one of the first API in the Oregon legislature. Please, Kian, introduce yourself.
Thanks so much, Donna, and good morning, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Kian. I use he, him pronouns. Currently working as Chief of Staff for Oregon State Senator Casey Jama. I was born and raised in Vietnam until 17 years old, and I immigrated here to Oregon in 2014. I also serve as the executive director for APICO, Asian and Pacific Islander Community Coalition of Oregon. And in that work, and also in my work as a chief of staff, I think one thing Anjali touched on is that we don't see a lot of representation. And a lot of time it's not just, about who running, who hiring, but I think everything have a trickle down effect on, the recruitment process, and then the process to run for office and all of that. And it's so very clear when you get to be in the system. And I'm hoping to discuss that more and share more about that work later on, but I'm very excited to share this panel with all the incredible and amazing panelists here today. Thanks, Donna.
Thank you, Kian. Our next panelist, I have Monique. One of Monique mentees worked for the U.S. Senate Majority Leader and then was the campaign manager for the U.S. Senator, who is now the chair of the Senate Finance Committee. Please introduce yourself, Monique.
Hi, thanks for having me today. I'm Monique Alcala. I'm very proud of that, of my mentoring of that young woman. She's an amazing person who I spoke to recently. But I've been working on campaigns for a little over a decade now. I got my start in Virginia's 5th District, and I found out really quickly that there weren't a lot of people that looked like me that worked on campaigns. And so my career over the last 10 years has really evolved into diversifying staff on the campaign side, but also working for candidates that look more like me. And so I think that's really important to both power build and also lift up historically excluded communities. I currently sit on the advisory committee of the Virginia People's PAC, and that's also an initiative to diversify campaigns at the senior levels. Last year, I worked on the Biden-Harris campaign as a coalitions director here in Virginia. And me and my wonderful team, along with the communications team, political, digi field, I have to give all the props because it was definitely a team effort, and data especially, all worked to achieve like a really historic victory here. We won by 10 points, so that's a big deal. And we're in the middle of another cycle, just so y'all know. Really important close phrase. But I'm excited to be here today and share the lessons learned and all my experiences in the campaign world.
Thank you, Monique. We're glad to have you here. Next, I'll introduce you to our last panelist. She is the first woman and woman of color and API to lead Business Oregon, and I had a pleasure of working with her in past workshops events. Please, Sopar, introduce yourself.
Thank you, Donna. That is very kind. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sapwan Jiang. My pronoun she, her. I have a privilege and honor to serve as the Director of Business Oregon. We are the State of Oregon Economic Development Agency. Our vision at Business Oregon is prosperity for all Oregonians. And I know we say that the word is Business Oregon, and as a state agency, our formal name is the Oregon Business Development Department. The work that we do every day, we seek to accomplish this by strategically investing in Oregon communities, businesses, and people to promote a globally competitive, diverse, and inclusive economy. So you heard the word globally, which means that because the work that we do at Business Oregon, we also working have the global trade section that where we make sure that we attract business and then also recruit business to come to invest in Oregon, as well as making sure that Oregon businesses have an opportunity to compete globally around the world. So I'm glad to be here and just very honored and humbled to share this panel with amazing, amazing leaders here today. We'll turn it back to you, Donna.
Thank you so much. I'm glad to have everyone here. As you can see, we have an amazing group of panelists. Next, we're going to move forward with our prepared questions. These questions, we want to discuss a number of topics through an intersectional framework. So the first question we have, tell us your lived experience as accomplished API, and then we can take whoever wants to go first. And you all have 3 minutes.
I can go first. So I'm really glad that we're talking about lived experience today. In a lot of spaces that I work in, both within NOW and coalitions that we do legislative work in, there's a lot of importance given to titles. And often titles have more meaning than lived experience. And I think it's really important to recognize the difference between the two, because I'm an immigrant. I grew up in India. I moved here to go to college. And I've been in circles where people are talking about bringing in groups of immigrants, or even highlighting a leader who leads a service organization for immigrants. And yet they totally sort of disregard the fact that there is an immigrant sitting at the table. So I just want to really highlight how lived experience is so important. Especially in my case, because I know that where I am today, my platform, my voice, all of that comes from something that I not just lived through, I lived through at a very young age. As I mentioned before, I grew up in India, and growing up in India, especially in the 70s, my life as a woman was really undervalued. There was no use for me really outside of the home. And I realized at a very, very young age that if I wanted something and I wanted opportunities in life, I was going to have to challenge the status quo, speak up for myself, and fight for it, because no one else was going to do it for me. That is not to say that my parents were not supportive. My dad especially was, and I was very lucky to go to a school that was only for women, where the teachers and the administration was extremely supportive. But at the same time, society placed so many constraints on me. And from a very young age, I was that rebel who always questioned, why something was a certain way. And you couldn't tell me, most of the time the answer was just well, this is how it's done. And I'm that's not good enough. I need a reason. And having had that, I will tell you, there have been many times in my life that's gotten me into trouble. It's not very popular when you question things, especially challenge the status quo all the time. But today, where I am in my leadership positions with NOW, in the coalitions that I work with, running for assembly right now, I recognize that all of those years of fighting for myself and fighting for others has given me a voice that often other people are not able to use. Just a small story. I was recently at an event. It was celebrating India's Independence Day. And as a lot of events are in India, even though this was in New Jersey, the men and women sat segregated. And this was mostly a senior citizen celebration. And we often think that people who came before us, the generations, did not have the same aspirations, did not have the same dreams as we do. And as I was leaving, most of the women who had stayed quiet during the entire event, I did not get to speak to them during the event. At the door, I had several of them come up to me and said, "Thank you for running women empowerment." And it made me really realize that there are so many people that we come across all the time, right? They have the same aspirations, they have the same dreams, but a lot of times they don't feel like they can speak up. So the fact that I'm able to do that is something I take very seriously. In all my work, I'm very conscious of the fact, as Kian mentioned before, there's not a lot of South Asians or Asians in general in politics. So I'm very conscious of the fact that when I am out there and I'm speaking, I am representing not just myself, but my community, and hopefully standing as a role model for some future generations to come.
Thank you, Anjali. That was beautiful. I definitely agree with that. Kian or Monique or Safwan, would you like to go next and tell us your lived experiences as an accomplished API leader?
Yeah, I can go. And actually, I'll keep it pretty short because I would love to talk about something that Anjali had mentioned about, being in leadership roles, how this is really difficult. And, where I grew up, it's not really racially heterogeneous. And so I felt the impact, or I did feel my ethnicity from very early on. And I forgot to mention, I am Filipino. By the way, I go by she, her pronouns. And so but the problem, I guess, that I developed over the year, or like growing up, was that one, I wasn't around a lot of people that looked like me. And then two, I always felt really self-conscious about that. I grew up around my grandmother, who is Filipino, she immigrated here with my parents, and like we cook fried bananas, and all the traditional, eatings, or all the traditional culinary items of the Philippines. And I always felt like sort of out of place. And then I think that, one, you sort of start to question whether or not, you're that you're doing the right things in life. And then all of a sudden, like all of these things, like sort of all the cultural teachings that she had, sort of indirectly talked to me about, like, just be very direct, speak your mind and stand up for yourself, and never, always question authority, or not. Well, yeah, always question authority, sort of going on what Anjali said about being rebellious. And so all of these things, like, sort of led me to, without even knowing, working in politics. And then whenever you get to working into this industry, like Kian and Anjali have mentioned, like they're just not, like I mentioned earlier too, that there just aren't a lot of people that look like us. And so all the things that I've learned throughout growing up, like I've just been able to question the status quo, be direct, say this is not how it should be, what can I do in order to fix it, and use like sort of my access to certain things, and really help build the pipeline of leaders and bring more people into this space. So it is challenging, just being from a community that that has been historically excluded and purposefully excluded. But it's really nice to like just be a voice at the table too. And I'll say that I'll go ahead and wrap it up there, but just wanted to mention that all this stuff is not just sort of glory and all glitter and glam and unicorns and rainbows. Like it's tough, especially whenever you're trying to have hard conversations with people that are not prepared for them.
Yeah, thanks, Monique. And I think like even like like being considered like an accomplished API is still like so like it's like I don't take that. I'm probably, many of you, like I don't know how you feel, but like just feel like weird, like I don't want to be called accomplished. I mean, like like growing up, like when I remember, like for me, like my life experience, I think like it's part of that. It continuing navigates the dynamic between myself and my parents. Like both of them, like they never got to go to school, but when they got here, they always want to make sure that like myself and my two younger siblings always have like the best opportunities that we can, but they don't know how. They just like, oh, we brought you to the US, so now please do whatever you can to be successful. And a lot of time, whatever I'm doing in my day job, to advocate for like immigrant, like for low income Oregonian, and for like like people that being underserved. But also at the same time, when I get home and my parents like disagree with that, it's just like it's just so conflict. Like when outside, like out of the family, you so proud, you're trying to lay all the work that you really passionate about. But when I get home, I just don't feel like that being validated. And it's not anything like personal. It's just like trying to like navigate that like dynamic, like ongoing still. Like my parents, they don't know that I'm gay. So I don't know, like when I tell that to them, how they will feel. Like all of my accomplishment, would that be shuffled away? Or all of the things I'm doing right now, they don't know, like they don't know exactly what I'm doing, but they know that like I'm doing something out there. So I don't know how many people have that same experience. And I think like, like continue going on, like, when I first moved here, like we don't know how to enroll in school. And I also didn't know that, where you live, your zip code determine like where you go to school. Like no one told us that. And I took the bus, I just got on the bus and go along like the 82nd Avenue is like a very popular street in Oregon, and just stop by as a random school and I asked them like, hey, can I go to school here? And they said, they looked weird and I said, where do you live? And then I gave them my address and I said, no, you have to go to the other school. And then I went to that other school and they said, but you're only 17, you cannot enroll yourself, you have to come back and bring your parents back to enroll you and your siblings. So I think like I don't have like like those kind of guidance, so like I have to like constantly putting myself out there to like meet new people, to like seek for like guidance. I was lucky that I met like Christine and Saffron and other people who keep guiding me, who keep telling me that please keep sharing your story, even though like they're not changing it, just keep telling your stories and keep trying to advocate for change. So I think like that something that I have to keep navigating. And now I'm in the state legislature. That is one thing very important to me. Is like how can we keep creating opportunities for other people that come behind us so that they can be part of that movement as well. Yeah.
Kian, thank you for sharing that. I mean, that's definitely the story of being an immigrant and being a refugee. And I appreciate you mentioned that, about kind of the intergenerational gap between our parents and us. My mom's like, I used to hear her talk over the phone with her friends, like, what does your daughters do? And then it's like, she was like, I don't know, she attends a lot of meetings. So they only knows that I'm just going to meetings, like for my job. That because I mean, like in our work, we just do a lot of those. I'm with Kian. I feel very, very humble with the terms and accomplished API because I feel that every single day I am learning. I'm still learning. Just being on a panel and hearing Kian, Angeli, and Monique, and our previous panels as well. That is so much to learn. So much that we can also incorporate and embed that in part of the work that we do. When Donna introduced me, I feel incredibly honored to be appointed by our Oregon Governor Kate Brown. And I know that for all of you who review here, it's not all from Oregon. Governor Kate Brown is the second female serve as the governor in the state of Oregon, and just for her to believe in me, and it's also giving me the opportunity to continue to serve under her leadership and her trust in my experience and leadership skills, just so important. I identify myself as Cambodian American. I was born and raised in Cambodia. Never did I think that I came here and moved to America as an immigrant and serve in the state government. So, but one thing that I know that for sure, because education is something that my parents continue to stress before. They have sacrificed so much to ensure that I have the better opportunities, and our family and younger generation have the opportunity to come here and never really lose sight on the importance of the learning. So 21 years ago, I moved here to Oregon to pursue my dream to study in America, and there I'm here in Oregon. I love Oregon, but growing up as a woman in a male-dominated society in Cambodia, it was quite a challenge to step up, speak up, let alone advocate for myself, or even seeing myself. That did I really see myself when I was born and raised, growing up in Cambodia, that I would even have an opportunity to be on the panel or even have the forum such as today. It's not very common that women hold high position of leadership. So there's not so many that I could see as a role model. Christine, I do want to point out that you heard her from her. She's one of my first mentors, and 20 years from after, here I am. She's still like, teaching me things, and I'm learning so much from our leaders who actually paving this path for us. So things are changing. Cambodia is changing. I'm just pleased to see that things are changing in Cambodia and also the world. And now that the world here, including America, is slowly uplift women into the leadership role. And I use the word slowly because I feel that there's still so much that we need to do. One thing I want to add, though, because living as a lived experience, and Angeli mentioned that in her part of her comments earlier, and say that why lived experience is so important, because it's really reflects who we are today, and then also it's like I need the time to adjust. So how we as a leader and how we in the community really understand that what women actually going through, what immigrants going through, because me on a personal note, when I was where I was born, I was told to stay away from trouble. Do not ask questions. Be respectful. Do not talk back to our elders or with people with high ranks. I see on my panel here nodding. I know that you all cannot see it. That is just really true. I mean, at the table, it's like, don't talk about the politics, and then it's like, as a woman, no, there's no room for space for it. So I'm very blessed. I'm blessed to be in a space that not just in Oregon, but I know that there's a lot of movement. There's so many leaders like my panelists today who actually have trying to make a change, and then I also have done so many things. So I'm just incredibly blessed to be part of this incredible group of fearless women and also men who fight and advocate for their rights. So with that, I just saying that I am honored and humble. And Donna, thank you for name and saying that it's accomplished API. I'm really honored with the term.
Thank you so much. I could resonate everyone through your lived experiences. I am not there as accomplished API. I'm still learning and growing and gaining more experiences, but I definitely agree on, with Monique, like, growing up, not seeing a lot of people in our position, and, the higher you grow up, the less you see these faces. I grew up in a lot of Asian community, but when I went to college, I was like, where did all my Lao community go? So it's something like, it's really important to tell our story and our lived experience. I'm going to go with our second question. How has your identity shaped your life? And gave one example how it contributed to you shattering the bamboo ceiling. We do have about 27 minutes. So everyone, please keep it under 3 minutes, please. Thank you.
I think I talked about a little bit of this or touched on it on the first question. Sorry if I overlapped a little bit. I'll go a little bit more in detail, just because I love talking about my grandmother. I grew up with her until she was about until I was about 7 years old, and then she moved away to Napa Valley to go live the life in retirement. So because she passed away a couple of years ago, she was an amazing person. I spent every single day with her after I came home from school. And we would cook, we would, just go walking, we would go shopping, she taught me swimming, and the swimming was literally, there's a pool that right across the street from my parents' house, was literally just putting me in the pool and like saying, you better swim. But it's those types of things, like those types of lessons that I learned from my grandmother, where it's always, basically, the pool thing is a good metaphor for it. You got to get in whatever uncomfortable situation and just like survive. And you got to do it, and you got to do what you can in order to survive. And so a lot of that is just speaking your mind, even enough, like I said earlier, even whenever it makes people uncomfortable, because we are sharing experiences that people are not familiar with. And so when people are not familiar with them, it can be uncomfortable. And so, and also being unapologetic about it. Whenever we're in these spaces where, it is pretty racially homogenous, I'll use that term again, but whenever we do speak our minds and we do speak from, our lived experiences, it is important for us to be unapologetic about our identities, because that you never know who else is going to be listening. The person that you mentioned earlier, her name is Anika. she messaged me like a couple of months ago, and she said that she was on a she herself was on a panel about Asian leaders, and she just started doing a lot of stuff in democratic politics, and she said that she had mentioned me during the panel discussion as somebody that inspired her, and I was like, oh my god, like, are you kidding me? So sorry, I'm gonna get all emotional, but it's important. I think that whenever we're talking about our experiences, you never know how that's going to impact somebody and how who is listening, and just seeing yourself reflected in leadership and just in different industries is an important thing to do. So like, just to recap, being unapologetically direct and just saying this is a problem, we need to solve it, and this is what we need to do to solve it, is something that I've definitely learned from my culture.
I just wanted to pick up on something that Monique said and kind of say a little bit more about that. Monique said, like, it was about getting into spaces where you're not necessarily comfortable and surviving. And I will say that for most of my life, like, I think that's what I was doing, was surviving. And I think in the last 3 or 4 years, especially, I would say in the last 12 months, I have finally gotten to a point where it's more intentional. And I think it's really important to get there. I feel better, even though I've been challenging things all my life, it's been with a little hint of fear, you don't know how somebody's going to take it or whatever. And now it really has become that, what Monique was saying, it's unapologetic. Like, I am here, I deserve to be in this space, and you need to recognize that. And I think I've seen a lot of people as some of our communities grow also, right? That strength also comes from community. When I first started in New Jersey politics about 4 years ago, I used to go to a lot of meetings, and I didn't always remember names, faces. And I would have people come to me and say, I remember you from like a month ago or something. And I'd be like, why do you remember me? And then it was soon that I recognized that I usually stuck out in the room because I was the only South Asian person in the room. And that is why people remembered me. It was really interesting to me. I was on a panel discussion with Andy Kim once, Representative Andy Kim, who's a rock star from New Jersey. And he said something that when he first got to Washington, D.C., there was no one there to help him. There was no network for him to tap into. He said, if I want to take the GMAT or the MCAT, my parents would have had 20 people I could talk to, but nobody could tell me how to navigate the world of politics. And that's why it's really, really important for people like everybody on this panel has talked about it before. Several people mentioned, Christine, Monique said, to really be able to be that mentor for the next generation and bring more people from our community, people who look like us, who share our values into these roles. One of the other things that I fight for all the time, and it's incredible to me, like people have said to me before how difficult this is, but I've never really, you don't really realize how difficult it's going to be until you're in there, is just the recognition of, I'm here, you need to include me. The inclusion part is so important. And I would say, I like to use the term of being comfortable with being uncomfortable. And I think that's where we need to get. And the last thing I would say that I really, really embraced RBG's saying of speak your mind, even if your voice shakes. Because there have been many, many situations where I go into a meeting and I want to say something and I know it's going to be tough. And I second guess myself and my voice will be trembling. And honestly, like there have been tears and people used to be like, oh, you can't cry, it shows weakness. And I've now come to realize that no, my tears are my strength because I'm not afraid to show you that I'm vulnerable. I don't see that as a weakness. My vulnerability is what makes me strong because I am human. I have that empathy and I'm making you recognize that, whether you like it or not. So I think that's really important.
I'm so inspired by Angeli, and that is so powerful. I'm, just showing your emotion and showing who you are. It really resonates with me, Angeli, when you say be comfortable with being uncomfortable. Donna, that question about shattering the bamboo ceiling, it's harder for me to kind of sit on it for a little bit. And I'm so glad to kind of just hear Monique and Angeli. Because when we talk about crashing the bamboo ceiling, and it has not really been easy for me. And I shared that earlier already, because partly because of my upbringing, my cultural identity, and then also my cultural differences. And in a way of thinking of how it's been make it so difficult for me to find the courage to speak up. So it takes time. So I appreciate what Angeli mentioned and Monique as well about that, the mentorship, and also seeing the people who can be the role model, right? Because as a woman, as an immigrant woman, I feel that there's the barrier, right? We talk about, like, this session is about intersectionality. So there is a challenge between the gender, and also you add race to it, and then also adding the immigration status to it. We not only responsible for ourselves, I feel that we also responsible for the people who are around us as well. Like for many of the women who I know who's come here as an immigrant, as a refugee, and not just only women, we all have to fight and represent our communities. We have to continue to be an interpreter for our families as well, probably almost every day. And for some of you who's on here and also on the audience here, you probably share some of this feeling, because I have two beautiful children, and I'm really grateful to have a supportive husband and a mother who live with us. But it's been the most struggling part about a working mother is day where things are hectic, and I miss the precious times with the children. And so, and it's really a daily struggle to balance and trying to make a right decisions about self-care, career, and then the family. So to me, that is, not only shifting between cultures, but being a woman is also, like, when we talk about crashing or breaking the bamboo ceiling, there's a question to us, like, so what do we choose between the professional success and also for personal fulfillment? I think it's one of, I'm not going to take a lot of the time, but I just wanted to highlight that there are some examples that I feel that in some way contribute to it, is being a part of creating and develop the leadership development programs. I was very grateful in my previous role that I was able to be a part of designing and implementing the leadership development program that is culturally specific, because being a part of the movement that for the collective action on not just need advocacy, but empowerment, building the leadership skills and connecting the pipeline of leadership. Christine talked about what APICO just graduated the first legislative internship program. Now that is how we set for breaking the ceiling, how we addressing what's the future leaders would look like. Because in my experience, I have seen that as a resource through the leadership development, through the professional developments at workplace. We have the API leaders, we have the younger generation and emerging leaders that have an opportunity to step into the roles that where they not just need advocate for policy, because we talk a lot about like advocate for policy, do this, do that, but we need more leaders to be part of that policy making table, to develop, to design, to create law and practice, to promote the anti-racist practice, and then also to run for an office. So that would be, I say that if, a part of it, if whatever's the role that we are in, make a difference, do whatever we could to do so. Kian, return it to you.
How can I follow after that? But thanks for, I will share a quick example. I think like my first year in the US was one of the most stressful time, because it was my first year in high school. I was also the oldest, and my parents, they don't speak English. So I was literally, whether I want to or not, I was the only one have to like translate like everything for my parents. I have to attend like the student parents conference for my two siblings as their parents, or like applying for healthcare, food stamps, like everything, all of that. I was really like hating that time. But then like after that, I didn't realize how much that experience, it being quite unfortunate, but experience like helped speed up my English learning process. like I didn't really speak English much in Vietnam, and here, like in the first year, like, I was throwing like you have to do all of that in English, so it's kind of helped me speed up like my learning like English experience. And also when I attended Portland Community College after high school, I brought that experience with me. Like now, I mean, I know like how to apply for SNAP, I know how to like, apply for food stamp, I know like how to apply for healthcare, all of that. And when I worked for student government, I was literally the only one who had to go through that process, and it made me help other students going through that same process a lot easier. And that's also the experience that helped me when I become like the first API or like immigrant student to serve on the board of director of the Portland Community College. Like they never had any student who have that direct experience on the board to share like those experience before. So even though like the administration, they know that the students on campus, they face food and housing insecurity. They know that like the textbook costs a lot of money. They know all of that, but not until you have someone there with that experience to keep pushing them to share that experience. That actually create change, because like within that year, myself and the group of students that we work together, we advocate for a more than $2 million saving for the student, because we push for an online textbook option for all the students to have that one, so they don't have to spend $1,000 on textbook. We also established food pantry at all 4 campuses on campus, which they don't have that before. We're also pushing for like the first ever all neutral restroom on campus for trans students, at least one per building on campus. So like, you know, like all of that, not because they don't know, but like when they have someone at the table to push for that, I mean, it make them like, you know, pressure to like talk about that. And it's remind me, you know, even though each one of us here, we cannot represent everyone, but like wherever we go, we really have the communities behind us that cheer for us, that support us, that has hope for us, and want us to be successful, so that we can like collectively fight for things together. So I think it's just important, you know, like whenever we share experience, I feel like it's a privilege, it's also a risk, but you know, it's also like have a lot of incredible things that we may not realize how it's like how it's turned out. I share one more quick example. Like during that experience, I was also the representation for my college to speak at the national conference with all the community colleges. I think they have about like 5,000 attendants in the audience, and I share about like how I am being gay. And then after that speech, like the CEO of the national organization came to me and talked in my ear like, me too. And I wish that I had that courage to share when I was young, and all I share with my staff. And she told me that, and I was like, wow, I didn't expect that at all. So I will just be closing this with one joke that I make all the time, that sometimes I feel unfortunate that, oh my God, I wish that my parents can speak English so that they can help us more. But also, wherever I share that, oh, I'm gay, they don't speak English, they cannot hear English, so they don't know what I'm talking about. So I will show them, hey, look at the video of me speaking like on like stadium and all of that, and they're so proud. But of course they don't know that, oh, your son talking about he being gay. But I make that joke all the time. But yeah.
Thank you, Kian. That was wonderful. And I know we have a little bit time left due to time boundary. I want to read a comment from Mary. She said, don't be afraid to speak up. You will be amazed how many people will join you, but are often afraid to begin the narrative. Yeah, I totally agree. When I started my educational journey, like I never used my voice, and people would assume, you know, that I was lucky to have a bachelor's and a master's, or my parents are so lucky to have someone to be their broker, but it wasn't luck. It was a lot of hard work and determination, and like me finding resources, finding the right mentors to be where I am today. And I came from a background where, you know, like it was hard for me to find these resources. So let's go with our third question, our last question. What endeavors are you planning for the future?
I'll go first, and I'll be very, very quick. Elect more people of color. Where I'm talking about API, Black, Latina, Latinx. We need more people. We need more diversity in office. We need more diversity working on campaigns. And I say that specifically because I think that's a piece that we often miss. But when we think about who works on campaigns, like when I'm on when I'm at a meeting, you know, on the senior staff of any campaign, I'm making decisions about what types or who I'm going to reach out to, what voters that we're talking to, what is the message that we are putting across, and whether or not we're going to expand our universe of voters, or we're just going to concentrate on high turnout, high Democratic voters. So that is really, really important to me. And so whatever, anything that I do, whether it is just sort of ad hoc or if it's professionally, it is always going to be centered around that.
Thank you, Monique. Please, you know, maybe you count me into to be a part of it. I share at the previous workshop at the APICO graduate earlier today that I'm very grateful. And so I'm very grateful for this question, Donna, because I wanted to share again that I'm thankful that where we are today because of many people ahead of us. So when you asked us about what our future, I wanted to follow that footstep because we stand on our elders and ancestors' shoulders and walk on the path that already paved for us, right? Because they have many of them who actually fight for us to be here, open that doors opportunity for us to be here. And with that, they continue to speak up, to fight with love, who believe in justice for all. So, but there's still a lot of work for us to do. I know there's a lot of work for us to work together, and my plan to be a part of that movement. So I have two things for, you know, for the futures that what I plan to do professionally. I'm proud to be a part of Business Oregon. I'm very committed to the work that we do to ensure that our state will create an opportunity for make sure that create an opportunity for the Oregon businesses and the community, and then really look forward to building an equitable and inclusive economic recovery plan for our state. I love Oregon, and I said it earlier already. I love our community. I cannot thank enough and very proud of where we are today in our community, because I have seen that us really come together, whether we are Asian community, Pacific Islander, Latino, Latina, Latinx, or Black community, or a tribal community. And so I want to be a part of, continue to help uplift younger and future leaders. With that as a personal interest, I would do whatever I could. I wanted to support, to lift the leaders of color, particularly our Asian and Pacific Islanders leader. Here in the state, we need more representation. We need more people to run and step into the leadership role and represent our community's voices. And on another personal note, that I just need to make sure that I make a better time and be a good mother to my children. I want to make sure that, you know, what is I'm planning to do for the future, to continue to see my children grow and then support their whatever they want to do.
So I want to echo what both Monique and Sophorn said, especially about the representation. That was one of the big reasons that I got into the race. Running for assembly is not something that I had really contemplated. Last year, I worked on the South Asians for Biden team, the national team. That's another thing that I'm really, really passionate about, is engaging more South Asians in the political process. Unfortunately, this is a community that is usually disengaged. They don't vote. They certainly don't run or donate to campaigns. And I am constantly out there, you know, sort of spreading the message on why that's important. But last year I was watching a webinar, I should say, when Assemblyman Mukherjee from New Jersey was talking about representation, and he was talking about how the 2020 census was going to show a great number of the increase in New Jersey. Well, the numbers are out now, and AAPI have gone up by a whopping 44% in New Jersey. We are the fastest growing minority. We are now 11% of the state. When I heard Assemblyman Mukherjee talk, at that point he said that, you know, by those numbers, we should have about 13 or 14 legislators. We have two. And today we have 3. And in our entire history of the state, I believe we are at like 5. And all of them have been men. We have had no women. So that was really something, hearing that really sort of like something clicked in my head and said, you know, you need to step up, you need to do this. This year, we have 5 women. We have 5 AAPI women running for legislature. And so, you know, some of them, like me, I'm in a competitive race. But there is no doubt there are some that are in pretty safe districts that they are going to make it in. So, you know, Assemblyman Mukherjee, Senator Gopal, who started the AAPI caucus in New Jersey, they always joke about the fact about how their number is 3. And this year, they're probably going to either double or triple. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it's very similar to my goals as well. I'm currently working on the Oregon Senate side, and we have 3 Black men, or like 3 men of colors. We have no woman representation at all. And even like with those 3 senators of color, 2 of them got to the Senate through the appointment process, not like through a campaign. So you know, like it's a lot of them has, you know, the structures, especially the campaign finance reform. So actually one bill that our office working on or preparing for is working on the campaign contribution limit and campaign finance reform to work on that system. And I think like aside from my job, like I work like with APICO. So I think like, you know, one of our goal is to build that pipeline. So training more young people and, you know, giving them that opportunity to start like exposing to politics and working in the legislatures. And I think like as APICO is spent, we probably will talk more about how we can create that mentorship and how we can train and recruit more API candidate to run for, you know, the office from school board to like legislature and beyond that. And lastly, I'm also part of the Young Democrat Party of Oregon, and I'm one of the 2 people of color on that 12 like elected members on that. So we're working on like an internship program targeting youth of color to make sure they getting involved in politics early on. So I think very similar to everyone here in the next few years.
Thank you. We do have one question from Joanne. I believe we could have maybe 1 or 2 people answer this question due to time. The question from Joanne is, what has inspired you to pursue what you're doing that is unique to your background?
I can go. Maybe I'm just repeating what I've said, but I felt very early on that I was not, or I felt very early on like the impact of my identity in a space that was not very diverse. And so that has completely driven my career path. I mean, whenever I started getting involved in politics, I had no idea I could do it. And then whenever I got to it, I was like, nobody looks like me. Let's just keep building the bench. So that's it.
I definitely resonate with that, Monique. I know that, you know, going to college, it's really hard to say, like, you know, people always ask me like, what is Laotian or where is Laos at? So like, I totally understand to like, you know, build that representation and really, really, you know, bring out our voices into the community. I believe we have a few seconds left, so I'll pass it on to Christine to close it off.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you AAUC and CLUSA for sponsoring and hosting this and for allowing us to be part of this conference, this forum. Thank you to the incredible speakers, Anjali, Kian, Monique, and Sopan, and the facilitator, Donna. Please support Anjali in her candidacy for New Jersey General Assembly to represent Legislative District 21. Support Oregon Now and make a contribution at noworegon.org. Support APICO by pledging a contribution at this time, and we will contact you. Please, I hope the speakers has inspired you and to run for office, to get involved civically, politically, advocacy and activism. Thank you so much again, all of you, for joining us. Have a great day. Bye now.